Hello, I'm Bobby Sentiment. Welcome to another topic about the next presidential inauguration address. Right now, well, I'm going to give myself a minute for a minute. Give myself a minute. Right now, there are going to be three topics we're going to talk about, right? I'm going to I'm going to address the presidential inauguration from Dwight D. Eisenhower. Our first, our president before, after Truman. I barely kept count how many presidents we have back then. Well, George Washington was the first president. Then the second one was John Adams, and the third one was Thomas Jefferson. Our goal right now is to get up to 120 minutes. That is our goal right now. If I want to reach another 2 hours, my watch hours has to reach 4,000, so I have to do another video. I don't know if I want to do another one tomorrow, but I may have to do one. This is January 20th, 1953, after Eisenhower was elected president of the United States. My friends, before I begin the expression of those thoughts that I deem appropriate at this moment, I will permit the privilege of uttering a little private prayer of my own, and I ask you to bow your heads. Almighty God, we stand here at this moment, my future associates, the executive branch of government, join me in beseeching thou make full and complete our dedication to the service of people in this throng and this fellow citizens of our. Give us, we pray, the power that we discern is the right from wrong. Allow our words and our actions to be governed thereby. And by laws of the land, specially pray this our concern shall be for all people, regardless of station, race, and calling. May cooperation be permitted and the mutual aim of those who, under the concept of our Constitution, hold our differing political faiths so that all may work for our beloved country and the glory. Amen. My fellow citizens, the road and we have passed is the midway point of a century of continuing challenge. We sense with all our faculties in the force of good. Evil are masked and armed and opposed as rarely before in history. The fact defines the meaning of this day. We are summoned by this honored and historic ceremony to witness more than an act of one citizen swearing his oath of service in the presence of God. We are called as people to give testimony in the sight of the world to our faith in the future shall be belong to the free. Since the century's beginning, a time of tempest has seemed come upon the continents of the earth. The masses of Asia has awakened the strike of the shackles of the past. Great nations of Europe have fought the bloodiest wars. Thrones have toppled and the vast empires have disappeared. New nations have been born. For our own country, it's been a time of recurring trial. We have grown in power and in responsibility. We have passed through the anxieties of depression and of war into some unmatched advanced history. Seeking to secure peace in the world, we have to fight through the forest of Argonne on the shores of Imajima and the cold mountains of Korea. In the swift rush of great events, we find ourselves groping to our fullest knowledge and meaning of understanding the besieged God's guidance. We summon all the knowledge in the past, and we scan all signs of the future. We bring all our wit and all our will to meet the question. How far can we come in man's long pilgrimage from darkness towards the light? And we're nearing the light a day of freedom and peace for all mankind, or at the shadows of another night closing upon us. Great of our precautions observing at us at home, concerned that all as we are, or what matters that deeply affect our livelihood and our vision in the future. Each of those domestic problems is dwarfed by and even created by this question involves all humankind. The trial comes at a moment when man's power to achieve good or to inflict evil surpasses the brightest hope and the fears of all ages. We could turn rivers to course, level mountains to plains, oceans on land, and skies as avenues for our colossal commerce. Disease diminish and life lightens. Yet the promises of this life is impaired by the genius that made it possible. Nations amass of wealth, labor sweats to create, and turns out this devices to level not only mountains but also cities. Science seems to really confer upon us that its final gift the power to raise human life from the planet. In such history, in such time of history, who are we to free claim our faith? The faith is abiding creed of our fathers. It is our faith of our deathless destiny to be a man, governed by the eternal moral and natural laws. The faith defines our full views of life, established beyond debate those gifts of the Creator that are man's inalienable rights, and to make all men equal is his sight. In the lights of equality, we know the virtues most cherished by free people: love of truth, pride of work, devotion to country, as all treasures equally precious in the lives of the most humble and the most exalted. The men of mine, the men who mine coal and fire furnaces and balance ledgers, and turn lathes and pick cotton in the heel of the sick and plant corn, all serve proudly to the profitable for America at the statesmen who draft treaties, the legislators who enact laws. The faith rules in our whole way of life, and the creeds that the people, elect leaders, not rule but to serve. It asserts that we are the right to choice of our own work and to reward our own toil. It inspires the initiative that makes our productivity to the role of the world. It warns that my man who seeks to deny equalities among all brothers betray the spirit of free and invites mockery and of the tyrant. It is because we of all us hold the principles that the political changes accomplished this day do not imply turbulence, upheaval, or disorder. Rather than this change expresses a purpose or strengthen our dedication and devotion to the precepts of our founding documents, conscious renewal of faith in our country, and our watchfulness of divine providence. The enemies of the faith know no God before us, no devotion, but its use. To tutor men in treason, they fed upon the hunger of others. Whatever defies them, they torture, especially the truth. Here then is joined no argument between slightly deferred philosophies. The conflict strikes directly at our faith of our fathers and the lives of our sons. No principal treasures that we hold from the spiritual knowledge of our free schools and churches to the creative magic of free labor capital. Nothing lies safe beyond the reach of this struggle. Freedom is pit against slavery, and lightness against the dark. The faith we hold belongs not to us alone, but to the free of all world. The common bound binds the grower of rice in Burma and the planter of wheat in Iowa, the shepherds of the southern Italy, and the mountaineers of the Andes. It confers in common dignity of the French soldier who dies in Indochina, the British soldier that died in Malaya, and African and American life given in Korea. We know beyond this. We are linked to the people that merely be a noble but by a simple need. No free people can for a long link to any privilege of enjoy any safety in economic solitude. For all our grown material rights, even if we need the markets of the world and our surpluses of our farms and our factories, equally we need these same farms and factories, about materials and products of distant lands. The basic law of interdependence so manifests the commerce of peace applies with the thousandfold intensity of the event of war. We are persuaded by necessity and by belief that the strength of all free people lies in unity, their danger and discord. To produce this unity, they need the challenge of our time. Destiny has laid upon our country the responsibility of the free world's leadership. So it's proper that we assure their friends once again that in charge of this responsibility, we Americans know that we observe the difference between leadership and imperialism, between firmness and truculence, between a thoughtfully calculated goal and sudden reaction to the stimulus of emergencies. We wish our friends the world over to know this above all. We face the threat, not the dread and confusion of the confidence and conviction. We feel the moral strength because we know that we are not helpless prisoners of history. We are free men. We shall remain free, never proven guilty of the capital offense against freedom, a lack of staunch faith. This is the stuff that Dwight D. Eisenhower spoke about. I will keep speaking for on his behalf. In pleading of our just cause before the bar of history and pressing of our labor of world peace, we shall be guided in certain fixed principles. These principles are: number one, during war chosen to the bulk the purpose of these threaten us. We hold to be the first attack of statesmen to develop the strength that will deter the forces of aggression and promote the condition of peace. For it must be the supreme purpose of all free men. Must be the dedication of their leaders to save humanity from preying upon itself. In the light of the principle, we should stand ready to engage with any and all the other joint effort to remove the causes of mutual fear and distrust among nations, so it makes possible drastic reduction and arraignment. The sole requisite for the undertaking in such effort are that in the purpose they must be aimed logically and honest towards secure peace of all. In that and their results, they provide methods of much participating nations will provide good faith in carrying outside the pledge. Realizing common sense and common decency alike dictate the fealty of appeasement, we shall never carry the besought aggressor by the false and wicked bargain, trading honor of security. Americans, indeed all free men, remember that the final choice of soldiers' pack is not a heavy burden, but as a burden as a prisoner's change. Know that only in the United States that is a strong and immense productivity can help defend its freedom in our world. We view our nation's strength and security trust upon which rests the hope of free men everywhere. It is the firm duty of each free citizen and every other free citizen everywhere to place the cause of country before the comfort of convenience of himself. Honoring the identity and the special heritage of each nation in the world, we should never use our strength to impress upon another people whose own cherished and not economic institutions. Assessing realistic and needs the capacity of proven friends of freedom, we shall strive to help them to achieve our own security and well-being. Likewise, we shall count upon the assume that within the limits of the resources, their full and just burdens the common defense of freedom. Recognizing economics and indispensable of military strength and free world's peace, shall strive to foster everywhere and to practice ourselves to encourage productivity and profitable trade. For the impoverishment of any single people of the world means danger well-being of other people. Number 7 is appreciating the economic need, military insecurity, and political wisdom combined to suggest a regrouping of free people we hope within the framework of the United Nations to help strengthen our special bonds the world over. The nature of those ties must vary different problems in different areas. In the Western Hemispheres, we seriously join with all our neighbors in the work of perfecting humanity, fraternal trust, and common purpose. In Europe, we ask the enlightened and inspired leaders of the Western nations strive with renewed vigor to make any and any of the people in reality. Only as free Europe, united and marshals its strength, can effect the safeguard, even with our help, its spiritual and cultural heritage. Number 8, conceiving a defense of freedom, like freedom itself. One is the invincible we hold continent, a people's equal in regard of honor. We reject the insinuation that the one race or another, one people or another, some inferior and expendable. Number 9, for respecting the United Nations as a living sign of all people hope for peace, we shall strive to make it not merely an eloquent symbol, but an effective force. In our request for honorable peace, we shall neither compromise nor tide or ever cease. By all rules of conduct, by known to all the people, by the observance on earth, peace may become by not a vision but a fact. This hope, the supreme aspiration, most rule the way we live. We must readere all of our country, for history does not long entrust the care of freedom to the weak or the timid. We must acquire proficiency in defense and display stamina and purpose. We must be willing, individually and as a nation, to accept whatever sacrifice may be required of us. A people that values their privilege above its principles soon loses both. These basic precepts are not lofty assertions, far removed from matters of daily living. These are laws of spiritual strengths that generate and define our material strength. Patriotism means equipped vocal forces and a prepared citizenry. More stamina means more energy and more productivity. on the farm and its factory. The love of liberty means that the guarding of every resources that makes freedom possible, from the safety of our families and the wealth of our soil to the geniuses of our scientists. And so each citizen plays an indispensable role. The productivity of our heads, our hands, and our hearts is the source of all strength we can command, for both enrichment of our lives and the winning of our peace. No person, no home, no community can be beyond the reach of this call. We are summoned to act in wisdom and in conscience, to work in the industry, to teach with persuasion, to preach with conviction, to weigh in our deed with care, with compassion, for the truth must be clear before us. Whatever America hopes to bring past world, we must come to pass at the heart of America. A really long speech Eisenhower spoke. This peace we seek, and nothing less than the practice of fulfillment of our faith among ourselves in dealing with others. The simply that we sting, the stealing of causing the sorrow of war. More than escape from death, it is a way of life. More than heavy for the weary, it is a hope for the brave. This is the hope that beckons us onwards in this century of trial. This is the work that awaits us all, to be done with bravery, with charity, and with prayer to Almighty God. My citizens, I thank you. Yeah, right now we're gonna take a breather. Right now, well, right now we can discuss the World Series. Right now, it's anyone's ball game. Right now, today, today Yankees will play the Guardians today, and guess on October 18th the Phillies will be taking on the San Diego Padres. The Astros is in the American League Championship right now. Part of me thought the Dodgers was actually going to beat the Padres, but I guess that one was out of the. Guess that one was out of the question. Anyway, Game 4 today is at 6:00 p.m. 6:07 p.m. Right now, Cleveland is leading. If they can beat one more game against the Yankees, they will go to the American League Championship. But it's unknown who's going to win. Well, we don't know who's going to win until like the American League National League Championship. It could be anyone's ball game. It would be either it'll be the Phillies or the Padres, like the Yankees and the Guardians. In Game 4, if the Yankees beat the Guardians in Game 4, they will have to go. They will have to settle this in Game 5 on tomorrow on October 17th. If one of them wins, all the way through 9 innings, they go to the American League Championship, and they will have to play against the Houston Astros. If they beat the Houston Astros if the Yankees or Guardians beat the Houston Astros for the American League Championship for 4 games, they will go to the World Series. Well, I'll take like a Phillies and Padres. It could be anyone out there. You guys must be really tired right now. I'm not. Not yet, anyway. My goal is to reach 120 minutes. 120. Right now we need a 2 hour video. Right now I need a 2 hour video to do this. And we're both tired. Let's get to the inaugural address for Jimmy Carter that I promised you about. This is January 20th, 1977, after he got sworn in. For myself and our nations, I want to thank you, my predecessor, for all done to heal our land. In this outward and physical ceremony, we attest once again in the inner spiritual strength of our nation. As my high school teacher, Miss Julia Coleman, used to say, we must adjust to changing. Times are still holding unchanging principles. Here before me is the Bible that used the inauguration of our first president in 1789. I have just taken the oath of my office on the Bible my mother gave me just a few years ago, opened the timeless enjoyment of ancient prophet Misha. And he hath showed thee that, O man, what is good, what does the Lord require of thee, but to do justified in the love of mercy and to walk humbly at thy God. The inauguration ceremony marks as a new beginning and new dedication with our government and new spirit amongst us. A president must sense and may sense and proclaim its new spirit, but only people can provide it. 2 centuries ago, our nation's birth was a milestone in the long quest for freedom, but the bold and brilliant dream with the excited and founders of this nation still waits the consummation. I have no new dream to set forth today, but rather urge to fresh faith in the old dream. Ours was our first sight openly to define itself in terms of both spiritually and human liberty. It is that unique self-definition that will give us the exceptional appeal that imposes on us as a special obligation to take those of the moral duties which assume that seem inevitably be in our own best interest. You have given me a great responsibility to stay and close to you, to be worthy of you and exemplary to what you are. Let's create together a new nation in the spirit of unity and trust. Your strength can compensate for my weakness, and your wisdom can minimize my mistakes. Let us learn together and laugh together and work together and pray together, confident that in the end that we will triumph together in the right. The American dream endures. We must once again have faith in our country and one another. I believe America could be better. We could even be stronger than before. Let our recent mistakes be a resurgent commitment in the basic principles of our nations. For what we know that if we despise our own government, we have the future. We have no future. We recall in special times that we have stood briefly but manifestly united. In those times no prize was beyond of our grasp. But we cannot dwell upon remembered glory. We cannot afford to drift. We reject the prospect of failure, of mediocrity, of inferior quality of life of any person. Our government must be the same time we both competent and compassionate. We already have found the high degree of a personal liberty in, as we are now, the struggle to enhance equality and opportunity. Commitment to human rights must be absolute. Our laws fair, our nature's beauty preserved, the power that must not be persecuted, the weak, the human dignity must be enhanced. We have learned that more is not necessary. The better, the even great nation has its recognized limits, that we can neither answer all questions nor solve all problems. We cannot afford to do everything, nor can we afford the lack of boldness that we meet the future. So together, in a spiritual spirit of individual sacrifice for the common good, we must simply do our best. Our nation can be strong abroad if it's strong at home. We must know the best way to enhance our freedom and in other lands demonstrate that our democratic system is worthy of our emulation. To be our true selves, we must be true to others. We will not behave in foreign places so as to violate our own rules and standards here at home. We know that the trust with our nations are essential to our strength. The world itself is now dominated by a new spirit. People are more numerous and more political aware are craving, so now demanding in their place in the sun, not just for the benefit of their own physical condition, physical condition, but the basic human right. The passion for freedom is on the rise. Tapping this new spirit, there we can be no nobler, more, no more, no nobler nor more ambitious task for American to undertake on this day, a new begin to help shape a just and peaceful world that is truly humane. We are a strong nation. We will maintain strength so sufficient that we no need to be proven in combat. A quiet strength based on no mercilessly size of arsenal, but on nobility of ideas. We will ever be vigilant, never vulnerable, and we will fight for our wars against poverty, ignorance, and injustice. For those enemies against us, we will, which our forces can be honorable and marshaled. Really tiring, isn't it? Right now I'm gonna give myself a breather right now. Reading this speech about Jimmy Carter, reading Jimmy Carter's inaugural speech is not easy to think. Think about all the interviews had to give him. Besides, a lot of times I don't think he doesn't. I don't think he doesn't even know what he wants. What he wants to say. It's hard to say what the president wants to say. I don't know if anybody's even watching right now, even though it's 2 o'clock, 2:54 p.m. in Missouri. But it's really kind of hard to answer that. I bet you right now, if anyone's watching right now, I don't know if they can ever want to watch 120 minutes of this. We're talking about 2 hours here. Me reading this. Hey, believe me. It might be cool to be president of the United States for one day. Yeah, well, too bad you have to be 35 to run. And you have to be born in America. But the problem is, getting elected is kind of tough. Mostly for me, the only way you can become president, well, not all of us can be Donald Trump or Ross Perot. Ross Perot lost a couple of times. But Donald Trump, he had a chance to win. He could have just take the governorship and then the presidency, but I think he wanted the presidency first. Well, take like Dwight Eisenhower when he ran. He had a lot of military experience and political backgrounds. There were times in my life he could have, mostly for me, he could have just gone for the senator's seat or the governor's seat before he took the presidency. But to tell you the truth, he was ready to be president back then. He wasn't just commander. He wasn't running just the army. He was also running the Navy, the Marines, and the Air Force back then. We don't have a lot. There are a lot of military guys who were president besides Eisenhower. There was Ulysses S. Grant, and this guy had no political experience back then, but he won it. Well, I can tell you right now that we still have some more time left, but right now I want to give myself a. Right now we're giving myself a breather right now. Reaching our goal is not easy to think. Not even if you're president of the United States. I bet you. I have no idea if Joe Biden's ever going to do a live video like this someday. Even if he did, it's gonna be. Even if he did, he has a lot of speechwriters to help him out. So I wish I could advise him one time and ask him for advice, but I don't think he would ever come to me in a million years. He has a lot of political advisors for that. Well, first of all, in America, if I had the first decision in America right now, there were a lot of decisions. There's a lot of stuff I wish I could do. Help the work bill. Create more jobs for the people. But like I said, I can't just say it when you're president. Mostly for me, we have to pitch it to Congress, and they have to make the law, and the Senate has to approve it too. The Senate and the government. Mostly the House and the Senate have to approve it. Then it'll be up to me to make sure it stays in there. leave my signature to stay in there. If I don't, I will veto it. All right, let's get back to the speech. We are a strong nation. We will maintain strength and sufficient that it needs to not to be proven in combat. A quiet strength based on not merely on the size of an arsenal, but not a nobility of ideas. We will be vigilant, we never vulnerable, and we will fight our wars against poverty, ignorance, and injustice. Those enemies which our forces can be honorably marshaled. We are a proudly idealistic nation, but no one confuse our idealism and weakness. Because we are free, we could never indifferent the fate of freedom elsewhere. Our moral sense dictates a clear but cut preference for those societies which shares the abiding respect for individual human rights. We do not seek to intimidate, but it's clear that a world in which others can dominate with impunity it would be inhospitable to decency and the threat of well-being of all people. The world is still engaged in a massive arrangements, a race against designed ensure continuing equivalent, such as potential adversaries. We pledge perseverance and freedom of our efforts to limit the world arrangements into the necessary for each nation of domestic safety. We will move this year at a step forward towards the ultimate goal, the elimination of all nuclear weapons from this earth. We urge that the people will join us for successful mean life instead of death. That's what Jimmy Carter was trying to pitch in his inauguration idea. Luckily, Ronald Reagan got to end the Cold War back then. With us, the people of the United States, there is evidence and serious purpose, rekindling of our confidence, and I join the hope when my time as your president has ended. People might say this is about our nation, that we have remembered the words of Misha and renowned outreach for humility, mercy, and justice, that we have torn between the barriers that separated those different races and region and religion, where those mistrust but built unity with respect of diversity, that we have found productive work for those able to perform it, that we strengthen the American family and the basis of society, that we show respect for the law and equal treatment under the law, and for the weak and the powerful, for the rich and poor, and that we enabled our people to be proud of their own government once again. I would hope the nations of the world might say that we built a lasting peace, but based on the weapons of war, but is international policies which reflect our own precious values. Yep, yep. This is the inauguration speech he's doing right now. They're not just my goals, and they will not be my accomplishments, but this affirmation of our nation's continuing our moral strength and our belief in our diminished, ever-expanding American dream. Thank you very much, and God bless us all. I added that in there. I added that. Right now, I'm doing a presidential news conference that Joe Biden read, that he addressed it for the president's news conference in January 19, 2022. This is Joe Biden's speech that he spoke about in the president's news conference. The president's hello, folks. Thanks for being here. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Tomorrow we mark our 1 year since I took office. It's been a year of challenges, but it's been a year of enormous progress. Went from 2 million people being vaccinated at the moment, and the moment I was sworn in 2010, millions of Americans are fully vaccinated today. That we created 6 million new jobs, and more jobs in 1 year than any time before. Unemployment dropped, but the unemployment rate dropped 3.9%. Child poverty is dropped by nearly 4%. But the biggest drop ever is America's history. New business applications grew by 30%, and the biggest increase ever. For the first time in a long time history, the country's working people actually got a raise. But the people at the bottom 40% saw their income go up. Most of the time, they got a raise. We cut health insurance premiums for millions of Americans' families, and we made surprise that medical bills illegal in this country. You know, there's bills that you don't expect. It's up to 2,000 and 5,000 from a hospital, beyond what you thought they were gonna that you have to owe because of the consolation that weren't told it costed that much. No more, no, they're now illegal. Thanks to America's Rescue Plan and other actions we have taken, we have seen record job creations and record net growth in the past year. Now, thanks to bipartisan fractionation bill, that we are able to make a record investment in rebuilding America, take us to the number one best fracture in the world. Well, now we're way below that. We'll be creating jobs for millions of people, modernizing our roads, our bridges, our highways, our ports, and our airports. Everything from making our clean water lead and removing lead pipes that every American turn on. America can now turn on the faucet and drink clean water, urban and rural suburban communities. It's going to make it affordable for high-speed internet available to every American, urban, rural, and suburban areas. We've never done this before, now we are. But we're in the process of getting this done. Still, all the progress, I know that there's a lot of frustration and fatigue in this country. We all know why. COVID-19 and Omicron has been challenging us in a way that it's the new enemy. But while it's cause for concern, it's not a cause for panic. We've been doing everywhere we can, doing everything we can, learning and adapting fast as we can, preparing for a future beyond the pandemic. Well, I know after 2 years of physical and emotional psychological weight of this pandemic has had everyone, for many of us, has been too much to bear. We are in a very different place now, though. We have tools, vaccines, boosters, masks, tests, pills to save lives and keep business and schools open. 75% of adults are fully vaccinated, but we got now from 9 million adults with no shots in arms in last summer down to 35 million with no shots of today. We're adding 9 million more vaccinations each week. We're going to stick with our vaccination efforts because the vaccination works. So get vaccinated, please, and get your booster. Look, we're increasing testing. Should we have more done testing earlier? Yes, we were doing more now. We're gone from zero to home tests years ago. 375 million tests in the market in just this month. If you buy a test at a store, your insurance will reimburse you. On top of that, we're making 1 billion at home tests available for you to order and be delivered to your home for free. Just visit the COVID test government to know how to get free test kits in your home. In addition, there are 20,000 sites where you can get tested in person for free now. Now we have more treatment that people can keep the people out of the hospital and any other points in the pandemic, including life-saving antiviral pills. We purchased 20 millions of those new peripheral pills, more than any country in the world. The bottom line on COVID-19 that we are in a better place than we have been. We have been thus far clearly better than a year ago. We are not going back. We are not going back to lockdowns. We're not going back to schools closing. Schools should stay open. Man, am I tired. Give myself a breather for a minute. Yeah, well, this is Joe Biden's early address right now. And the midterm election 2022 is we have to think about the Roe versus Wade. If we want to reinstate it, we're gonna need every Democratic senator. We already need 60 Democratic senators in the seats to get this thing voted. Even if the Republicans take the House, but they can't take the law since it was passed. I don't know if they could, but they could try. But right now, we do need the U.S. senators on board to get this Roe versus Wade Act back in earth. That's the reason I think we're building a new Roe versus Wade and make sure it's never going to overturn for good. So the only way we can reinstate Roe versus Wade is to get the law passed. And I know Joe Biden can't sign anything or make a legislation until the Senate votes. The Senate will not going to vote until January, February, until after the midterm election is over. If we can get 60 senator U.S. we can get 60 Democratic senators on board to vote, we will get make this into a law, and also Joe Biden to vote, Joe Biden to sign in. Okay, let's get back to this. Because of American Rescue Plan, we provide the state 130 billion to keep our students and educators safe and schools open. Funding our ventilations and systems, social distance and hygienes for classrooms and school buses. In addition, we added another 10 billion for COVID-19 tests to be able to administer at schools. Many states and school districts have spent their money very well. Unfortunately, some haven't encouraged the states and school districts to use the funding to protect our students and keep our schools open. Use it. The COVID-19 is not going to give up and accept things. It's just not going to go away immediately, but I'm not going to give up and accept things right now. Some people may call that happening now, but the new normal, I call it a job, not yet finished. It will get better, but we're moving towards a time when COVID-19 will disrupt our daily lives, where COVID-19 will be a crisis, but something to protect against the threat. Look, we're not there yet, but we will get there. The second challenge is we're facing prices. COVID-19 creates a lot of economic complications, including rapid prices increase across the world economy. People see it as the gas pumps, grocery stores, and elsewhere. Here's what we're going to do: a critical job in making sure that the elevated prices don't become an wrench and tries rest for the Federal Reserve, which is a dual mandate. Full employment and stable prices. The Federal Reserve provide extraordinary support during the crisis the previous year and a half. Given the strength of our economy and the pace of recent prices increase, it's appropriate as the Federal Chairman Powell, the Fed Chairman Powell has indicated that we calibrate the support that is now necessary. I respect the Fed's independence, and I nominate the 5 superb individuals to serve on the Federal Board of Commissioners, governors, men and women from very theological perspectives. They are men qualified and historically diverse and have earned bipartisan praise. I call the United States Senate to confirm that without any further delay, and here at the White House and for my friends in Congress, the best thing to tackle high prices is a more productive economy with a great capacity to deliver goods and services to the American people. Growing economy where folks have more choices and more small businesses can compete, and where more goods get to market faster and cheaper. I laid out 3-part plan just to do that. First, fix the supply chain. COVID-19 has global impact on the economy. When a factory shuts down in one part of the world, shipment to shops and homes and business all over the world disrupt the COVID-19 is uncompounded and many times over. A couple of months ago in this very room, we had talked and we heard dire warnings that how these supply chain problems could create real crises around the holidays. So we acted. So we brought to get business and laborers that much predicted crisis did not occur. 99% of the packages that were delivered on time were stocked, and notwithstanding the recent storms that we have impacted the parts of our country. The share of goods and stocks at stores is 8% now, which has barely changed at 91% before the pandemic. I often see empty shelves being shown on television. 89% are full, which is the only few points that was before the pandemic. But our work is not done. My infrastructure law will supercharge our effort, creating everything from roads and bridges to ports and airports, railways and transit to make the economy move faster and reduce prices for families. Man, am I tired. Second things, my Build Back Better plan will address the biggest cost that working families will face every day. No other plan will do more to lower the costs in American families. It cuts costs for child care. Many families include the people sitting in this room. If we have children, they're working full time. Many families have to pay up to $14,000 a year for child care in big cities, less in smaller ones. My plan cuts it that's in half. That will not only be a game changer for so many family budgets, but it means so much for the nearly 2 million women who left the workforce during the pandemic because of things like child care. My Build Back Better plan cuts the price of prescription drugs, so insulin that today costs some people much as $1,000 a month will cost more than $35 a month. It cut costs to elder care and it lowers energy costs. It will do all this without raising a single penny in taxes on people making under $400,000 a year and raising the deficit. In fact, my plans cut the deficit and the boost the economy by getting more people into the workforce. That's why 17 Nobel Prize winners of economics said it will ease long-term inflationary pressures. So the bottom line is, if price increases are what you're worried about, the best answer is my build back better plan. The third thing is what we're going to do is promote competition. Look, in too many industries, a handful of giant companies may dominate market in sectors like meat processing, railroads, shipping, and other areas. This is a new issue. It's not been the reason why we have inflation today. It's not the only reason. It's been happening for a decade. But over time, it has reduced competition, squeezed out small businesses and farmers and ranchers, increased price of consumers. And we end up in an industry like meat processing industry. We or four big companies dominate the markets, pay ranchers less for their cattle to grow, charge consumers more for beef, hamburgers, meat, whatever they're buying. Prices are up. Look, I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's exploitation. So why I signed an executive order to tackle unfair competition in our economy. We're going to continue and enforce it along with working with the Congress where we can. This is the stuff that Joe Biden's speaking about in this press conference. Hope anyone ever listened about what he was saying here. A lot of times, one thing about presidents, so we don't even know what they're most for presidents. They can't make any laws. The only thing, take like Joe Biden, he can't make any law. The only thing he can do is pitch the law to Congress, and it's up to them if they want to make it. And that's what you do when presidents usually lobby laws, like Roe versus Wade. He's lobbying right now, trying to get the law to reinstate Roe versus Wade, because abortion laws that women need the abortion law. Women need abortion laws for it. Republicans don't get it yet, but the Democrats are getting it. That's the reason why people need to reinstate Roe versus Wade. They might not know it yet, but they will know it in the future. I close with this. We have faced some of the biggest challenges we face in this country with the past years. Challenges our public health, challenges our economy, but we get it through. Not only we're getting through, we are laying a foundation for a future where America's wins at 21st century by creating jobs at a record pace. Now we got inflation under control. We have developed extraordinarily effective booster shots and antiviral pills. We need to finish the job to keep COVID-19 under control. I long said that I never been a good bet against the American people of America, but I believe there is more than ever today. We've seen the grit and determination of the American people the past year, but these days the country is still ahead of us, but not behind us. Now I'm happy to take questions. One of the reporters asked, "Thank you, Mr. President. I know some of the colleagues will get into some specific issues, but I want to zoom out on your first year in office. Inflation is up. Your signature domestic legislation is still Congress in a few hours from now. The Senate is an effort to rights and voting from legislation is going up to fall. COVID-19 is taking the lives of 15 Americans every day. The nation's visions are just all raw a year ago. Did you go for promise, American public, that you could achieve the first year in office? And how do you plan to correct these? President, why are you such an optimist?" Well, Joe Biden addressed that question to the reporter journalist. Look, I don't overpromise, but I have probably outperformed what anybody thought would happen. The fact of the matter is that we are in a situation that we made enormous progress. But you mentioned the number of deaths from COVID. Well, it was 3 times that not long ago. It was coming down, but everything is changing. It's getting better. But look, I don't overpromise, but I think you take a look at what we're able to do. You have to acknowledge enormous progress. But one thing that I seen one thing that I haven't been able to do as far as get my Republican friends to get in the game of making things better for this country. For example, I was reading the other day, and I wrote the quote down. I don't misquote him. I quote from Senator Shemu. He decided that he wasn't going to excuse me for Governor Sununu when he decided he wasn't going to run for the Senate in New Hampshire. Here's what he said: that we're all, for the most quote, that we're all the most part content, but the speed at where we're doing anything. It was very clear that we just had to hold the line for 2 years, so I'm going to be roadblocked the next 2 years. That's not what I do. So that's the news. He wouldn't say it bothered me that they were okay with that, and that here goes what he says. I said, okay, we're not going to get the stuff done if we win the White House back. If we win the White House back, we didn't do anything in 2017 and 18. Then he said, how the Republican senior spoke to the answer challenge. He said, crickets, yes, crickets, they had no answer. I do not participate in such a stalwart effort to make sure the most important thing is the President Biden didn't get anything done. Think about this. What are Republicans for? What are they for? Name one thing are they for? And so the problem here is I think what happens. What I have to do is to change in the tactic, if you will, make it clear that for the American people that we're what we are for. We passed a lot. We passed a lot of things that people don't understand and what's all in it for understandable. Remember, we passed the Affordable Act here, and yet everybody thought that it was getting pummeled and beaten. It wasn't until you're out of office and the next campaign, then off your campaign. And I went to the whole. I wasn't in the office anymore. We were in a bunch of district campaigning for Democrats in the Republican districts who said that what we want to do is healthcare with Obamacare. And I started to point out that you did that. Pre-existing condition no longer be covered. And they said, huh? We don't know that. We didn't know that. And guess what? We won over 38 seats because we explained to people exactly in that fact that passed. The one thing that I remember saying that, and on this, I remember saying the President Obama, when he passed the Affordable Care Act, I said, you ought to take the victory lap. And he said, there are so many things going on and don't have time for victory laps. As a consequence, no one knows the details of the legislation was. They don't know a lot of details of what we have to pass. So the difference is I'm going to be on the road a lot, making the case across the country to colleagues who work for re-election and others, making a case what we did and what we want to do and what we need to do. And I don't think I overpromised at all. And I'm going to stay in this track. One thing I remember is I'll end this with I was talking with you. Jim Clyburn, who was great help to me in the campaign in South Carolina. Jim sat and we endorsed me. There was a clip on television the last couple of days of Jim, and it said that we want to make things accessible and affordable for all Americans. That healthcare, that education, and the prescription drugs, that make sure that you have access to all the things that everybody else has. We can afford to do that. We cannot afford not to do that. So I tell my Republican friends, here I come. This is going to be about what are you here for? What are you for? And the layout wherefore is. And the layout what are you for? Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned your Republican colleagues, but right now the top legislative priorities. Your social spending package and voting rights legislation are still blocked by your own party. After months of lead negotiation, you're only guaranteed the Washington for one more year before the midterms. Do you mean more realistic or scaled down on the priorities, or to get some president? Answer that question. I don't think so. What you say is more realistic, and I think it's realistic to say that to people because they let me back you up. You already know the politics in this country and your networks and others. You spent a lot of time, which I'm glad you did, pulling this idea, determine what the American people's attitudes are, etc. The people can overwhelmingly agree with me on prescription drugs, but they overwhelmingly agree on the cost of education. They overwhelmingly agree with me on this early education, overwhelming and go on the list on child care. We should have to make the case that we're for and what other teams are not for. Look, we know all along that a lot of people was going to be an uphill fight. One of the ways to do this is to make sure that we make contrasts as clear as we can. And one of the things I think is that we're going to have to do is just make the case. I don't think there's anything unrealistic about what we're asking. I'm not asking for castles in the sky. I'm asking for practical things that the American people have been asking for a long time. I think we can get it done. You say you're not going to scale down these priorities, but so far that strategy isn't working. You haven't been able to get some of those legislative tickets done. That's what one of the journalists spoke about. The president answered this question. I got two real big ones done, bigger than any president ever gotten in the first year. Another journalist says, but currently, Mr. President, you're spending a package of voting rights legislation. They're not going to go anywhere. The president says that's true. The Building Back Better Act voting rights legislation, congressional legislation 2022. So, is there anything you're confident that you can get signed into law before the midterm elections? The president says, yes, I'm confident we can get pieces of big chunks. Is the Build a Better Back law signed into law? I'm confident we can take the case of the American people that they should be voting for, but we're going to oversee whether the elections in fact legit or not. It should not be those who put in the Republicans to determine whether they're going to be able to change the outcome of the election. So whether or not we can get an election. And by the way, I haven't given up. We haven't finished the vote on what's going on the voting rights stands, John Lewis bills. But so far, I've been engaged for a long time in publicly policy. I don't know many things that I've done on one fell swoop. So I think that's the most important thing to do is try to inform, not educate, inform the public of what at stake in stake terms, stark terms. Let them make judgments. Let them know who's for them and who's against them, who's there and who's not there, and make the case. And what I'm going to be spending my time in this off year's election is Senator Mitt Romney voting right legislation. Another journalist. Well, I'm not going to. Right now, I'm going to take another breather for a minute. Yep, I've been here for 15 minutes. 15 minutes to reach my goal. When I hit 60, we will. When I hit 60, we will finish the rest of the speech. Finish the rest of Joe Biden's press conference. You know, it's kind of weird. One thing about being president, you don't know what you're going to say. It's not just the speech the president's going to speak about. It's about what the questions he has to answer to the press. That's one thing about presses right now. You don't know what you can answer them, and you don't know what you're going to say to them. You know, you could be a salesman, but you don't know how to. One thing is for autistic guys like me. If you're autistic and you try to sell a product, you probably back down that easy. Like me, I didn't back down too easy either. Say like this, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm selling or what I'm trying to say. But Joe Biden knows what to say. He's gonna have to figure this out in the midterm election. And right now he's trying to get 60 U.S. senators, 60 Democratic senators on this in the Senate seat. But I also know that the Democrats can also control the House right now. So, like you said, it's anyone's ballgame right now. Wonder if anyone's started yet. Nope, none of you guys are. None of you guys left yet. Man, I wonder if you guys are tired, like I am. Well, there's one trivia question I want to ask you right now. What kind of ice cream does Joe Biden like to eat? I don't think he doesn't like to eat anything. I don't even know what his favorite. I don't even know what he likes to eat. Maybe I'll get to that soon. One day after I finish this, what his menu is like. Let's get back to the press conference. And just very quickly, you mentioned the Republicans and recent outcome. Some Republicans may open to major change on voting rights. For instance, like Mitt Romney, he says he's never received a phone call from the White House. Why not? The president speaks. Well, I like Mitt Romney. I like Mitt. Look, Mitt Romney is a straight guy, but he and the one things that we're doing is trying to make sure that we got everybody on the stage in my party on this score. I didn't call my many Republicans at all. The fact is that there are. I do think Mitt is a serious guy, but we can get things done. I think they're predicted that they'll get this some done on the electoral reform on the side of this. But rather than judge what's going on and get done and not get done, all I can say is I'm going to continue to make sure why it's important not to turn the electoral process and the political person who are set up deliberately to change the outcome of the elections. Then Alison Harris, News Nation, please. Voting rights of 2022 election voters turnout. Another journalist asked another question to Joe Biden about. Thank you, Mr. President. Speak on voting rights legislation. If this isn't passed, do you still believe that the upcoming election will be fairly conducted and the result will be legitimate? The president will. It depends on whether or not we're able to make the case to the American people that some of this is being set up to alter the outcome of elections. One thing to and it's one thing. Look, maybe I'm just being too much of an optimist, but remember how we thought that many people were going to show up to vote in the middle of a pandemic. We had the highest voter turnout in the history of the United States of America. And I think of its fact that no matter how hard they make, but it's for the minorities to vote. I think you're going to see them willing to stand in line, and the fight they tend to keep them from being able to vote. I think you're going to see the people who they're trying to keep from being able to showing up and making the sacrifice that he needs to make it in order to change the law back to what it should be. But it's not going to be difficult. I make no bones about that. It's going to be difficult. We are not there yet. We're not. We've not run out of options yet. And I see how it moves. School closed and federal assistance for schools. This is the Joe Biden's press conference. Here's another question from a journalist who asked a question to Here's another question to ask Joe Biden. And a mark on an education. Teachers are the result in some revolt in so many places. Parents are odds over closing schools and remote learnings. You're not going to go back. You're not going to go back to school closing schools. You said just a moment ago there are some closing in some areas. What do you say in those teachers and principals and parents about schools closing? What can the administration do to help make those learning lost students? Joe Biden answered that. First of all, I put in perspective the questions you asked. Very few schools are open. Over 95% are still open. But yeah, you phrase all the questions. When people, I don't think, are deliberate your part is, but you phrase the question. If anyone watches on the television, my God, this must be all those schools must be closing. What are we going to do? 95% are still open. And number one and number two, the idea parents don't think it's important that for their children to be in school, and teachers know as well. As we make sure that we are ability to provide the funding through a recovery act. So, for the act that we have the first act passed, so we're able to make sure that schools will be able to be safe. And so we now have new ventilation systems available for them. We have the way to handle it. They scrub down the lavatories, and I mean the lavatory kids to go to the bathroom, cafeterias, buses, etc., etc. That and all the money is there. The billions of dollars made available is there. Not every school district has used its schools to be used. But in addition to that, there's another 10 billions for testing of students in that school. So I think as time goes on, it's much more likely you're going to see that number go back up to 95% to back up to 98, 98, 99%. But the Alpha Individual District says that we're going to be open, but it's going to be, it's always going to get. I'm not going to be critical of any of you. It's always going to be in the front page. It's always going to be on the top of the news. But let's put it in the perspective 95 as high as 98% of the schools Americans are open, functioning, and capable of doing the job. How about Jen Epstein and Bloomberg? Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. You're top of your foreign policy advisors and warned that Russia is now ready to attack Ukraine. But they're still amongst the European allies. They're what a package of sanctuary Moscow looks like. If the U.S. and EU aren't willing to put troops on that line to defend Ukraine, American allies can't agree on the sanction package. Hasn't the U.S. and the West lost nearly leverage of Vladimir Putin? Well, and given the effective sanctions has been the firing of the button in the past, should the threat of new sanctions give him a pause? The president answered that question to that journalist. Well, because he's never been sanctions, the ones who promised to impose his moves in number one. Number two, we're in a situation with Vladimir Putin is about to. We had a very frank discussion. Vladimir Putin and I, and the idea of NATO is not going to be united. I don't buy. I've spoken to every major NATO leader. We had the NATO Russian summit. We had other OC has met, etc., etc. I think we're going to see that the Russia has been held accountable if it invades. And it depends on if it does. It's one thing. It's a minor incursion that we end up fighting about what to do about and what not to do, etc. If they actually do what they're capable of doing with the forces amassed at the border, it's going to be a disaster for Russia. If we further invade Ukraine and that our allies and partners are ready to impose several costs and severe harm on Russia and the Russian economy, and we're going to fortify our NATO allies. I told him the eastern flanks, in fact, he does invade. We're going to. I already shipped over 600 million of sophisticated equipment and defense equipment for the Ukrainians. The cost of going to Ukraine in terms of physical loss of life for the Russians, they'll be able to prevail over time. It's going to be heavily going to be real, and it's going to be consequential. In addition to the Putin, that has a stark choice. He's either diplomacy, confrontation, or the consequences. Look, I know you're going to see, for example, everybody talks about how Russia is going to control over the energy supply, and Europe observes, well, guess what? The money that they earn from them makes about 40% of the economy. I don't say that's a one-way street. They go ahead and cut it off, and it's like my mother used to say, you bite your nose off to spit your face, but it's not there. It's not like they have these wonderful choices out there. So I spoke with Prime Minister of Finland, and that top of the concern of part of Finland and Sweden about Russia's doing. The last thing that Russia needs is Finland deciding to change status. They didn't say they could do what they said they're not going to do what. They're going to talk about what in fact is going on and how outrageous Russia's being. We're finding ourselves a position where I believe you will see the severe economic consequences. For example, anything that involves a dollar denominations, if they will. If they invade, they are going to pay. They're not going to. Their banks are not able to deal with dollars. So there's a lot going to happen. So here's the thing. My conversation with Putin, and how could we say it? We have no problem understanding one another. He has no problem understanding me, nor me him. In the direct conversation, the point out said, you know what, you've occupied before in other countries, but the price has been extremely high. How long? You can go in and over time, at great loss and economic loss, go into the occupy Ukraine. But how many years? 1, 3, 5, 10, what is not going to take? What toll does it take? It's real, it's consequential. That's not just a cakewalk of Russia for Russia. Militarily, their overwhelming superiority relates to Ukraine, but they'll pay a stiff price, mainly near terms, medium terms, and long term if they do it. I'm sorry, okay, David Singer? I'm sorry. Russia, Ukraine, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is what Joe Biden spoke about. He answered that reporter's question in the presidential press conference. Not easy what he's trying to speak up about. Man, speaking about these press conferences, are not easy to think. It wasn't easy for Joe Biden to figure out how to stop a war. Right now, we're not at war with anyone right now. But right now, we are trying to stop this invasion against Ukraine and Russia. Right now, Joe Biden's trying to find a way to stop this, try to get peace between Ukraine and Russia right now. He'll do what he can. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to follow up on your answer about Russia and Ukraine. When you were in Geneva in June, you said to us about President Putin, I think the last thing he wants now is a Cold War. Now, since then, of course, you've seen him gather these troops and 100,000 troops around Ukraine. Your Secretary of State today that he thought he could invade at any moment. You've seen the cyber attacks. You've been demanding that you have a sphere of influence of which you withdraw all your American troops and nuclear weapons from what used to be in the Soviet bloc. So I'm wondering if you still think. I wondered if you still think the last thing he wants is a Cold War, and you, as your view of him changed in the past few moments, and as he does invade, he wants your posture to be really moved back to kind of containment policy you're so often we're both still in the Senate. That's what the journalist is asking about. How is the president going to stop this war against Russia and Ukraine? Well, right now this is what Biden answered. The answer is I think he still does. The answer is that I still think he does not want any full blown war. Number one. Number two, I don't think he'll test the West, test the United States or NATO as significantly as he can. Yes, I think he will. But I think he'll pay a serious and dear price if he doesn't think now will cost him what it's going to cost him. I think he'll regret have done it. Whether or not I think that, how can I say that this is a public forum? I think he's dealing with what he believes is the most tragic thing happened to Mother Russia, and that Berlin Wall came down, the empire has been lost. Now, near aboard the Soviet Union, it has been split. The thing about what he has 8 time zones. 8 time zones. And burning tundra that will not freeze again naturally. The situation is a lot of oil and gas, and he's trying to find his place in the world between China and the West. I'm not sure what he has, but David, I am not so sure he has. It's certain he's going to do, but my guess is he will move in. He has to do something. And by the way, I indicated to him that the two things that he said to me is that he wants guarantees of one is Ukraine will never be part of NATO, and two that NATO there will not be no strategic weapons station in Ukraine. And we could work out something in a second piece, depending on what he does along the Russian lines, as of the Russian border in the European area of Russia. And the first piece, we have multiple treaties, international in Europe, and that suggests that you get to choose you want to be with. But the likelihood of Ukraine is going to join NATO in the near term, not very likely. Based on much more work we have done in terms of democracy and a few other things going on there, whether or not the major allies in the West vote bring in Ukraine is right now. So there's room in the work if he wants to do that, but I think as usually he's going to, I probably shouldn't get any further. That will hurt him and badly. That's one reason why that is one reason why he's going to, that's the reason why President Biden's going to do whatever, Joe Biden's going to do whatever he can to make sure this war doesn't take place. That's the reason why he's doing a treaty, make sure there won't be no second Cold War with Russia and Ukraine. Joe Biden's going to make sure they don't fight. That's what he's addressing right now, is to stop this war against, make sure Ukraine and Russia doesn't fight or invade. Mr. President, it sounds like you're offering some way out here, some offering. It sounds like what it is. It's like informer assurance that NATO is not going to take in Ukraine anytime in the next few decades, but it sounds like you're saying, well, we'll never put nuclear weapons there. If he wants us to move all our nuclear weapons out of Europe and have not troops rotating the old Soviet bloc, do you think there's space as well? That's what the reporter was trying to ask President Biden about how we're going to end the war. How we're going to stop this war, prevent this war, or prevent this war and stop the invasion. But Joe Biden answered this question. No. There is not space for that. We won't permanently station, but the idea we're not going to. We're going to increase troop presence in Poland and Romania, etc. In fact, he moves because we have a security obligation in Article 5 to defend those in our country. They're a part of NATO, so we don't have obligation relatives of Ukraine. We have great concern about what happens in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to follow up your comment to Build Better Back and also ask your question about the pandemic. Well, and there's another question for Joe Biden from this presidential press conference. You said you're confident that you could pass a big chunks of Build Better Back Better this year. Does that word mean thinking that you're looking at the breaking the package to individual portions? Then on the pandemic, now the Supreme Court has blocked vaccinations or test rule for larger business. Are you reconsidering whether to require vaccine domestic flights as the way to boost vaccination rates? The president answers that journalist's question about this one. No, look, first of all, the last part of this question, the Supreme Court decision, I think it was a mistake, but you still see thousands of people who work for major corporations are being tested as a consequence of the decision made by the corporation and not by the standard that's set there. You'll see the increase, not decrease, number one. What was the first part of the question? On your comment that you made that you're confident, Mr. President, yes. Major chunks to build back better, yes. Can pass. Are you breaking it up? Does that mean? Joe Biden answered that question. Yes, well, it's clear to me that we're going to have to probably break it up, but I think we can been talking to a number of my colleagues on the Hill. I think it's clear that we've been get support in the $500+ billion of energy and the environment. Lesson number one. Number two, I know two people who've opposed the Democratic side at least support a number of things that are in there. For example, Joe Mancini strongly supports early education. Number 3 and 4 of yours strongly supports that there is a strong support for I think a number of the way in which you pay for the proposal. So I think there is. I'm not going to negotiate against myself and what should and shouldn't be in it. I think we can break the package up, get as much as we can now, and come back and fight for the rest later. Ken, the Wall Street Journal. Ken Thomas. Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to ask you about the economy. You said earlier that Americans are feeling the squeeze. The President asked, yes, of definite inflation, oil prices, and about 7-year high recently. How long do Americans expect to face higher prices when they are at the grocery store or when they're at a gas pump? Is there something that they're going to see into the summer and next fall? And separately, now you talk about the importance of the Fed. Isn't that an acknowledgement that you're limited to what you can do if you are relying on the Fed to make decisions? You're not able to build back a better proposal, though? Aren't you simply limited to what you can deal with this inflation? The president says, well, look, as you know, Ken, the inflation has everything to do with the supply chain. And I think you better see we're making progress on speeding the access to materials. For example, 1/3 of the cost of the increase in the cost of living cost these automobiles. The reason automobiles have skyrocketed in prices because of the lack of computer chips. So we have the capacity. We're going to do everything in our power to do it, become self-reliant on the computer chips that we need to able to produce more automobiles underway. We already passed within the context of another bill, money in the House of Representatives. It's before the House of Representatives now. I think there's a way we can move to, and if we move to get, for example, there's one thing done. We can make a difference in terms of cost and total cost of living. Now, regardless of the issue of energy prices, it's more complicated, but see what happened to convince everyone, including China, India, and a number of other countries, agreed to go into their version of their petroleum reserve to release more on the market, and that brought down prices from 15 cent gallons in some places. There's going to be reckoning about along the line whether or not they're going to continue to see oil prices to go up in the way we're going to now. The relative is going to what's going to what impact it's going to have on the producers. So it's going to be hard, and I think the place is more middle class people, working class people to get the most. They pull up the pump, and all of a sudden they're paying $2.40. They're paying $5 a gallon, and that's going to be really difficult. So we're going to continue to work on trying to increase supplies that are available. I think there are ways, and we can be some of the value that at terms of price of gas and natural gas and the like to take the burden of the European countries now, depending on Russia. Now it's going to be hard, but it's going to be very hard. But I think we have to deal with it. For example, is like you said, you have circumstances where people are paying more a pound of a hamburger meat than they ever pay. So one of the reasons for that is that you don't have many folks out there that are gonna. We got this big four controlling it all. So you're gonna see more and more. We're gonna move on the competition place to allow more small operations to come in, and we're able to engage in buying access to much cheaper meat than exists now that we're gonna haul now. And as I assume that the reason you said I can't build back better as relates to what no 17 Lord economists that said that if we could pass it, would actually lower the impact of the inflation, reduce the inflation over time, and so there's a lot we have to do it. It's not going to be easy if we can get it done, but it's going to be painful for a lot of people in the meantime. And that's why the single best way to take the burden of middle class and working class is to pass the Build Better Back piece that our things are paying for a lot of money for now. If we get the trade of a higher gas, as you're putting up with a higher price of hamburger and gas, but versus whether or not you're going to have to able to pay for education and or childcare and the like, and most people would make the trade. The bottom line will be better if middle class is households, but it's going to be hard and it's going to take a lot of work. China-U.S. trade. If I may fall, sir, that you mentioned China, do you think they're going to the time has come to begin lifting some of the tariffs in Chinese imports, or if there's a need for China to make do on some commitments in the Phase 1 agreement? Some business group would like to be raising, lifting up those tariffs in China. Biden spoke about that, answered that question. Well, I know that. That's my trade rep is working on that right now. The answer is uncertain. It is uncertain. I like able to be in my position where I could say they're meeting the commitments and more of the commitments. We're able to lift some of it, but we're not there yet. Nancy Cordes on CBS. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, 2022, versus election Republican Party. Thank you very much, Mr. President. This afternoon, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the midterm elections are going to be a report card on your progress, inflation, border security, and standing arrest. Do you think it'll be fair to look at it the way you look at it? And if so, how do you think your report cards are right now? The president says, I think the report card's going to look at pretty good, but if that's where we're at. But look, the idea is that Mitch has been very clear that he's going to do anything to prevent Biden from being a success. And I get on with Mitch, I actually like Mitch McConnell. We like one another, but he has straightforward objective, make sure that there's nothing I do to make me look good in his mind, the public at large, and that's okay. I'm a big boy. I've been there before. But the fact is that I'm happy to debate. I will refer to them now how I handle the economy, whether or not I make the progress on when to look again, and how can I'm taking long answering the question. I apologize. So I think the fundamental question is, what's Mitch for? What's he on for immigration? What's he for? Proposing to make anything better? What's he for dealing with Russia? Then they're proposing. Many of the Republican friends and colleagues are supporting as well. And where are these for? So everything's a choice. I think they looked. I laid out the proposal on immigration if we passed it. So we've been in a totally different place right now. We're not there yet. If we don't have a single Republican vote, my buddy John McCain is gone. So I mean, it's going to take time. And again, so I go back to Governor Sunu's quote. Part question I know is that this is not fair to ask the press question. I'm not asking you, but I'm thinking about, have you ever thought about, you ever think about, you ever think that one man out in office can intimidate an entire party? They're only take any vote contrary to what he believes should be taken for fear and be defeated in the primary. I had 5 Republican senators talk to me, bumped into me, quote unquote, or sit with me, who told me they're agreeing whatever I'm talking about, what to do. But Joe, if I do it, I'm going to get defeated in the primary. So we got to break that. Now it's going to change. I doubt I'm not going to sound salacious, so you're bright as hell. So I'm informed to you that any group in America that did any fact that you can get not a single Republican to verge in immigration, not one. Another question the reporter asked: Can you tell us those 5? Can you tell us who those 5 Republicans are? No. Are you kidding me? I maintain confidentially. Voting rights. President, I'm sure you've spoken to some. Voting rights, sir. The president, yes. I'm going to skip to that part, but. Well, I want to get to the voting parts right now because I'm already getting laryngitis right now. Wonder if Joe Biden ever got laryngitis from speaking all these questions. But you want to change the definition right now. The president spoke about that. I'm finding what the answer is. Get the booster shot. It's all part of the same thing. You're better protected. There's one question another journalist asked about his inaugural address. In fact, in your inaugural address, you said your whole soul was bringing America together, uniting our people. People heard the speech that you gave on the voting rights in Georgia recently, which described as opposed to you that George Wallace and Jefferson Davis. Some people took exception to that. What do you say to those who are offended by your speech? Is this country more unified when you took office? Number one, anybody who listened to that speech does not say they were going to be a George Wallace or a Bull Connor. I say we're going to have a decision in history. They're going to be marked when it's just like when it was then. You either voted on the side, you don't make it a George Wallace, or didn't make it a Bill Connor. But if you do not vote for the voting rights aspect, then you are voting for those who agree with Connor and those who agree with. And I did think that Mitch did a real good job making it sound like I was hurting them. If you notice, I haven't attacked anybody publicly, any senator, any congressman publicly. In my disagreements with there have been made to terms, communicate to the person or in person with them. My desire is still look. I underestimate one very important thing is I never thought that the Republicans, like for example, said they got very upset, and I said that there are 16 members of the present United States Senate voted to extend the voting rights. Now they got offended by that. And that wasn't an accusation. I was just saying the fact. What has changed? What happened? What happened? Why is there more? Why is there not a single Republican, not one? That's not a Republican Party. That is not an attack. Man. Well, there's another question. Here's another question. But I'm going to take myself a breather right now because right now I'm almost getting laryngitis for speaking. Wonder if you can tell me that if Joe Biden ever gets laryngitis every time he talks, or he gets carpal syndrome every time he has to sign something, even if he has to sign an autograph or something. Wonder if you guys are tired right now. Are you satisfied with your team here at the White House, sir? The president says unsatisfied. I am satisfied with the team. The three things that I'm going to do differently now is that I will now that I've gotten the critical crisis out of the way, in the sense of moving, knowing exactly where we're going. Number one, I'm going to get out of the place more often. I want to go out and talk to the public, and I'm going to do the public foray. I'm going to interface with them, and I'm going to make a case what we already done and what's important, what we'll do. If what will happen if they support what else I want to do. Number two, I am bringing more now that I have time. I mean, literally like you, I'm not complaining. It's 12, 14 hours a day, no complaints. I'm really sincerity. But now that certain the big chunks have been put in place, and now we have the direction, I'm also going to be seeking more advice to experts outside for academia and the editorial writers and to think tanks. I'm bringing them in, just like I did early on, bringing the president historian to get the perspectives of what we should be doing, seeking more input, more information, more constructive criticism, what I should and shouldn't be doing. And the third thing I want to do is a lot more of is being in the situation I'm going to bring. I'm going to deeply involved in these off years of off year elections. We're going to be raising a lot of money, and we're going to make sure that we're going to helping all these candidates and scores of them have been already asked me to come and campaign with them and to go out and make the case in plain, simple language, and so as to what we've been done, what we want to do, and why we think it's important. There's another question he wants the president will speak about. So, sir, what is the new normal, Mr. Biden? What is the new normal like, sir? What does the new normal looks like? Joe Biden spoke about that. Whoa, hang on, guys. We only got an hour and 20 minutes, and I'll keep going. But I'm going to go. Let me get something straight here. How long are you guys ready to go? You want to go for another hour or two? Yes. Until we get called on, sir. We got you. Okay, I wanted to tell you what, folks. I'm going to get another 20 minutes until a quarter. Okay. Thank you, President Biden. President Biden on. Thank you. Wait for the microphone. Man, as President Biden does this all the time. One final question to the president. One final question the press is going to say. A reporter asked about in the presidential news conference. I have two really simple questions. I promise you campaign on canceling on $10,000 student loans. Do you still plan to do so, and when? And the second question is, now that you clarified Bull Connor's comment, do you plan to reach out to Republicans like Mitt Romney to talk about the Reform Electoral Count Act? The president says yes. I'm happy to speak out. Joe Biden spoke about his final question. Yes, I'm happy to speak out that I met with and I talked to Mitt on their occasion. And by the way, I reached out to the minority leader as well as that made by his speech. I don't elect to reach out to any Republican, anyone that I made clear. Now I have the opportunity to travel because for funerals and eulogies I made and attended the congressmen and senators who came along with me. I don't hold this number on me, but somewhere between 20 and 25 senators and congressmen traveled with me. And I find you should get the list of them and ask for what, how, will you know. Sat for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours that we've flown together and sat back in the conference table and talked to them and asked them the questions. And they asked me questions. I learned a heck of a lot. But as president, you don't have to quite that ability to do that so often. I'll do it. And one of the things I do think it has been made clear to me that speaking to polling is the public doesn't want me to be the president senator. They want me to be the president, and they want me to be and let senators be senators. And so I made many mistakes. So I'm sure if I made mistakes, I'm used to negotiating to get things done. And I've been in the past relative success in the United States Senate and even the vice president. And I think the role as a president is a different role. But folks, it's now almost 6, and well done. With all due respect, I'm gonna see you at the next conference. Okay, thank you. That's it. Well, that's it for today. No, that's it for Mr. Joe Biden today. This is his presidential news conference that he spoke about. January 19, 2022. They almost probably got a cold doing this. So, what do you think about President Biden's new area? Right now, he's thinking about. Right now, he's concentrating on the midterm election. He is lobbying really hard, trying to get 60 U.S. senators aboard. 60 Democratic senators elected in office. And the only way we can get Roe versus Wade back on the get back in the legal board is to get the U.S. Senate to vote in 60 get 60 U.S. senators to vote in the Roe versus Wade. This will be a new law if we get it passed for the senators that we and President Biden sign it. It will be a new law that will make sure that no one can overturn it, not even the U.S., not even the Supreme Court, not even the Republicans could take it out. Wonder if any of you guys are tired right now. There's a lot of inauguration from presidents for a long time. But there was inauguration for Abraham Lincoln back then. But his Gettysburg Address is the one thing that was more popular than ever. That helped us win the Civil War. That helped the Union win the Civil War against the South. I'm sorry I haven't talked right now, but right now I have a sort of right now I'm just keeping my voice and giving myself a breather right now. Now, well, think about the World Series. Who do you think is going to go? Do you think the Yankees might have a chance to beat the Guardians, or do you think the Guardians may? I think Guardians only has one more game to win, but it's anybody's. Right now, we're trying to reach our goal of 120 minutes. We need a 2 hour. We need a 2 hour. Right now, we need 2 hours. I don't know if it's 120 or 130. So I never guessed. I kind of lost count about that. Well, we're in 100 minutes right now, but our goal is to reach 120. Well, today the Yankees are going to be taking on Guardians, the Cleveland Guardians, or I could say the Indians. But back in the old time, back then we call them the Cleveland Indians, but right now I'm calling them the Guardian. They're called the Guardians right now. So, what are the odds of the Cleveland Guardians winning going to the American League Championship? They have been to the World Series a couple times. Even right down 2009, the Yankees. The only last time the Yankees been to the series was in 2009. So it's anyone's ball game back then. We know Babe Ruth turned the team around when he was sold by the Red Sox. When Rupert sold him to the Red Sox, $125,000 for Babe Ruth. Man, that must have cost a lot of money back then. Back in that time, back in the 1920s or 40s or 60s, mostly 10, 20 or 50 or $100,000, $8,000 is a lot of money back then. $100,000 right now, $125,000 was a lot of money in 1920s. It's like millionaires. It's like being wealthy. It's like tons of money back then. That's where if you reach the 10,000 mark, that's you're super wealthy. Right now, $10,000 in this time right now is small change. And take like Alex Rodriguez. The Yankees paid him $100 million. $100 million for him. For the $100 million for him. The thing about one thing is, do you think there could be a billion-dollar athlete? I mean, you have to find a billion-dollar athlete. You think the Yankees was going to cough up $1 billion, pay a pro athlete $1 billion to play? If that was going to be good, if that was going to be good, if that was going to be, if that was going to happen, they would live like a king. They wouldn't even have to work. I don't think you don't get $1 billion. Well, first of all, they don't pay. First of all, they don't pay $1 billion just like that. I think they pay before or after before you start. It's like a pro athlete. I have no idea when do they get paid. Do they get paid after the season's over or before the season's over? Think about when the season is over. Mostly rookies right now can get guys who start can get $100,000. The $1 million if you guys do well or if you do a good job, if you can move up to $1 million. Doesn't matter if you do a good job or not. You have to work your way up like all the others. Every athlete doesn't just get paid $100,000 or $500,000. They work their way up like everybody else. Not each player gets an Hall of Fame. Some do, but some don't. Half of them can make 10 or 20. At least they'll get a pension even after they leave. After they retire. There's also career-ending injuries. If you're lucky, if you get played for 10 seasons, you get injured. If you have a career-ending injury right now after 10 seasons, that'll be good for them. In the National League Championship right now, the Phillies are going to be taking the Padres on October 18th. And right now, the American League Championships haven't started right now. The Houston Astros were either going to face the Yankees or the Guardians in the American League Championship back then. Like you said, it's anyone's ball game over there. And the next election is in 2024, so this is going to be 2023, so we only have another year left before Joe Biden starts campaigning. He might campaign in the summer, before November. Well, one thing is in the one thing about the Republican party is that anybody can run. I know Donald Trump's thinking about running for 2024, but he doesn't have a chance. After what happened when he ran the White House, I think he doesn't have a chance to get in the primary or get in the front runner seat. Tell me, when do you think the World Series is going to start right now? Well, we know the American League Championship's going to. We know the championship will start October 18th. And the World Series might start on October 28th. Depends on if there's no delays. If there is a rain delay, that's going to be bad for us back then. That's one thing about pro football. But one thing I told you about in pro football is they play in the snow or rain. And that doesn't stop them from playing. And that's one thing about indoor arenas with basketball. They don't have to worry about rain or whether there was raining or snowing back then. Even if it was rain, even if the water was wet, they could hurt them. They could trip or fall down. Well, they did play, mostly basketball courts outside. They did play basketball courts outside in the rain or snow, but they had to be careful back then. But indoor arenas, I don't think so. They had to make sure they don't hurt themselves. Well, reading Dwight Eisenhower's inauguration and also Jimmy Carter's about how they shaped America back then. Well, at least both of them had military experiences. Even though Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer, but he had some experience in the Navy. And believe me, that's a tough thing. Believe me, guys who get in the Navy, Naval Academy is really tough to get into back then. But if you don't quit or give up, you might have a chance to win. What's tough in the Naval Academy? How about the Navy SEALs? That is tough to get into. Mostly these guys usually get washed out in 5 minutes when you sign up. Imagine this. I bet you a woman. If you've seen G.I. Jane, I've seen a Navy woman. I've seen Demi Moore's character made it through Navy SEAL training. And believe me, she never gave up or quit. So the toughest military unit had to be the Navy SEALs or the Marines. And believe me, the Marines are tough. You have to be like a total survivor to make it to the Marines. Well, it's 100 at 109 right now, so we're almost there. Well, right now Fox is probably broadcasting the World Series right now. Back then, in 1997 through 90s, we had NBC Sports that it boosted a lot of ratings back then for for the World Series, even the Super Bowl and the NBA Finals back then. Now the NBA Finals is either on TNT or ABC, and now ABC is getting the ratings in sports. One thing ABC can do now is just report on the games right now, or an interview. Wonder if anyone's tired right now. I always want to ask you about the Hart family from the wrestling dynasty back then. Some of them made it big, some of them don't. Not all of us can be Bret Hart. Bret Hart was the number one top wrestler in WWE. Then there was Owen Hart, but his family was not allowing him in the Hall of Fame. It's about, they let Owen Hart in there. Even they let Stu Hart in here. He was the one who trained all the top wrestlers out here. Even trained the ones who were not in the Hart family. I always want to know if Joe Biden finishes his term or his second term, he's going to move back to Delaware. It's a good state, a good place. I think I've been there before, and it's a good state. Sometimes I wish there were pro sports in Delaware. We have it. A lot of times it's not exactly fair that there are other states that don't have pro sports in there. Take like Iowa. They don't have a lot of pro sports there. Only sports we only have minor league. We have minor league baseball teams. Heck, we have college sports. We have college sports, but never pro sports. Not even in Omaha. We have college sports, but never pro sports. The only sport we have is the minor league baseball team with the Omaha Royals. But in Delaware, they should get one. I bet you that's very disappointed by. One thing Joe Biden's really disappointed is that we don't have a pro sport in Delaware. Take like in Washington D.C., we have the Washington Wizards, we have the Washington Nationals. Heck, we have the Baltimore Ravens, Baltimore Orioles. Even we have the Washington Redskins. I don't know if there is any bad. Well, there is. I don't know if there is like a hockey or. Well, we do have a baseball, basketball, and. Well, we do have baseball, basketball, and football in Washington D.C. or in Baltimore. But I'm sure there's a hockey team there. I bet you that's one thing that Joe Biden's really disappointed that we don't have a pro sport there. If we did have a pro sport there, maybe it would make Delaware more famous. A lot of people don't exactly heard Delaware a lot of times. But to tell you the truth, we should put more pro sports in there. Even in Maine, they deserve a pro sport there. Mostly one thing they're famous for is fishing and coasting. But they deserve to have a sports team there, pro sports team there. Mostly Delaware and Maine only have college sports, but never pro sports. That's one thing about Iowa. They don't even have one either. They have college sports, but never pro sports. Even Minnesota has one. They have the Timberwolves. They have the Twins. They have the They have the Vikings. They back then used to have the North. They used to have the National Hockey League team, the North Stars, before they moved to Dallas. But now we have another one. But we have a new one now. Even Los Angeles back then, we used to had all four. Like in California, we had a pro football, basketball, hockey, and NBA and basketball and baseball. Even when the college sport, even in college, even when pro football moved the teams from Oakland and to Oakland and St. Louis back then. Well, at least not now. At least Las Vegas, we finally got a pro sport team. That's the Raiders. Right now, it costs like a fortune to go there. I think it costs about $50 or $60 just to get a ticket there. And it must cost a fortune to get a ticket there. You're lucky you'll just watch it on TV. By the way, even if Delaware does get a pro sports team, what do you think we should have? Do you think we should have hockey or baseball or basketball or football there? I think if Delaware, I don't know what the capital of Delaware is, but I think I'll look it up. You know, the biggest city in Delaware is, well, we know Dover is the capital of Delaware, but the biggest city is Wilmington, Delaware. I think that's a good place to have a sports team, a pro sports team there. But what would you call a football team in Delaware anyway? First of all, you need three things. You need to either you can get the governor or the city council or the mayor's approval, and the NFL's commissioner to get the approval too. It's hard to get those zoning laws if you're trying to form a sports team there, a pro sports team there. And you have to also build an arena and get the permits, everything. It's really impossible to build that stuff right now. Half the time, you barely even know what you're doing. You have to be like super smart to build it. That's how you have to start a pro sports team in Delaware. You have to get in good with the city council and the mayor and the governor, and also get the NFL commissioners on board. And you have to get those building permits. That's the reason if you're friends with the mayor, he can help you with that, or the city council. But one thing you never do is the one thing you have to do is you have to get in good with these guys. But it's not easy, One thing about being a salesman, you can't sell a thing. I bet when Major League Baseball started, a lot of times, it's not easy when you form a baseball team. Take like the Minnesota Twins. So, besides, building a new baseball team is going to cost a fortune in Major League Baseball. Suppose take like L.A. Suppose the Rams never came back to L.A. or the Chargers stayed in San Diego. Right now, San Diego doesn't have any pro sports right now. Pro football right now. The only way you can watch a pro football game, when we watch a football game in San Diego, is by college. Well, right now, the only pro sport we have is the baseball team. Right, that's it. We're 10 more minutes before the goal. All right, that's it for today. This is Bobby Cinema. Goodbye and good luck.